Welcome everyone. We are on the hour now, and I think we'll begin. Today we are gathered to honor the earth, and we want to make particular acknowledgement of the first peoples of Turtle Island who have shown the way to respect and care for Mother Earth. I am on the territory of the Huron-Wendat, Batoon, Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit Indigenous peoples, knowing that many more Indigenous peoples are at this place in Toronto. This territory here is governed by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the lands and resources of the Great Lakes. I want to welcome each and every one of you here today. For many years, a coalition of organizations in the Toronto area has put together an Earth Day walk, likewise a Peace Day walk in the fall. And this year, due to the coronavirus restrictions, as you may have guessed, we are taking it online. And that allows us to invite speakers from farther away, as well as listeners from farther away. And we're so glad that you are all here. And with our online version, we really want to thank the staff from World Without War, Greta and Mark, who are hosting the technical aspects of our celebration today. Thank you so much for taking that on. And if anyone has trouble, you can go to them in the chat. Greta and Mark, do you have anything to remind people about at this point?
Thank you, Shannon. My name is Greta. I'm the organizing director with World Beyond War, and we're so glad to be part of this event today and to be able to provide the Zoom platform for this event. Just some logistical reminders. We are recording this webinar, so if you have to drop off, don't worry, we'll send you the recording afterwards. We're also live on Facebook right now. Everyone is muted right now, and you will have a chance to unmute during the discussion part of the webinar towards the end of the event. So just stay tuned for that, and we'll provide instruction during the Q&A. And you can also type in questions and comments throughout the whole webinar in the Zoom chat box and also in the comments section on Facebook. Thanks.
I've already seen a few people introduce themselves in the chat bar, and that is welcome as well. We are a community here. We're not a huge group. I don't know if you can all see, we're just over 50 of us at this point. Even if it grows, we welcome you saying who you are and leaving comments in the chat box. The theme for today is Voices for the Earth. And we have many great speakers to share with you how people are speaking out for the earth. First up, I want to introduce Father Bob Holmes to tell us about why this is a blue scarf Earth celebration. Father Bob is a Catholic priest, coordinator of the Basilian Center for Peace and Justice, and is active in several of the sponsoring organizations you'll be hearing from today. He has recently visited Kabul in Afghanistan to meet the young Afghan peace volunteers who originated what has become the worldwide Blue Scarf movement. So I hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I want to take people to Kabul to meet the Afghan peace volunteers. And they're really brave young people, and they've grown up in a war zone. And at the time I was there were weekly suicide bombers, and there was one while I was there, about three blocks from where we were. So they're incredibly brave. That lovely young woman in the center there, her name is Zarguna, and she met me at the airport along with 3 others. And she, with the others, explained to me a lot about what they were doing. But that word on her hand really spells it out. It says enough. And for them, it means enough violence and war.
Mhm.
And she says, we stand for nonviolence and a world without war. It stands for enough inequality. We stand for equality between men and women, between tribal groups, faith traditions, nations, north and south. But for us, especially today, it stands for enough global warming. They stand for a green revolution worldwide. And that's the message that they want to spread throughout the whole world. And they've had a dream, and they're very computer literate, and they wanted to get a worldwide blue scarf movement going with 1 million youth all over the world wearing blue scarves. So I'm going to take you now to Toronto. And this is where the blue scarf movement has been operating since 2015. And we have the banner here that kind of expresses their whole purpose. And it's building a border-free world without war under one blue sky. And today you're going to meet 6 speakers from all the organizing, sponsoring groups of the Blue Scarf movement here in Canada. And I hope you'll listen really attentively and enjoy, and I hope you'll join the movement. It's a border-free world without war under one blue sky. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob. And our first speaker is, we're really pleased to have grandmother Doreen Bernard. Doreen is a Mi'kmaq grassroots grandmother, a water protector, water walker, and survivor of the Shubenacadie Indian Residential School. Doreen, I'm pleased you've accepted our invitation and so glad you could be here with us this afternoon. Welcome.
Well, Alan, Nindalawasi, Gesadam Dandali Olnui. I'm from the Beaver clan. The Otter clan, Kilnik clan, and I'm from Sebaganegati. And today I wanted to share a little bit about the Alton Gas project that's in Mi'kma'ki that we have been fighting against for the last 6 years. One of the things I think was really important was recently an appeal that came through the Supreme Court that sided on behalf of the Indigenous people here in Mi'kma'ki, in Sebaganegati, that there wasn't consultation. So we've been in the courts since 2016 because of the lack of consultation, and we've had to spend. Our band has spent almost $1 million fighting against the corporation and the government of Nova Scotia regarding our rights, treaty rights, the Mi'kmaq 17th century treaties. And so what we won was procedural fairness. That's what we won in 2017 when we went to court. So it didn't happen in 2017. So what happened was we went back to court and appealed that decision. And in 2019, the Minister of the Environment without doing any further consultation, just said that she believes that they consulted enough, and proceeded to allow this environmental permit. So we had to go back to court again and appeal that decision. So we've been tied up in the courts for several years while we've been at the river protecting the water. And I'm a survivor of the residential school, and this little booklet talks you a little bit about the truth, reconciliation, and the calls to action. And in the legal systems, under the reconciliation, in section 51, it says, we call upon the federal government, the government of Canada, as an obligation of its fiduciary responsibility, to develop a policy of transparency by publishing legal options it develops and upon which it acts or intends to act in regard to the scope of the extent of Aboriginal and treaty rights. In section 52 is why what I would really like to speak about. We call upon the government of Canada, the provincial and territorial governments, and the courts to adopt and the following legal principles. Aboriginal title, our title claims as accepted once the Aboriginal claimant has established occupation over a particular territory or a particular point in time. We've been here for 13,500 years. And we've been talking about the peace and friendship treaties, which never gave up our lands. We agreed to share our lands and our resources for people to live. The Aboriginal title claims are accepted once the Aboriginal claimant has established occupation over a particular territory. We claim all of Mi'kma'ki, not just in Nova Scotia. Once Aboriginal title has been established, the burden of proving any limitation of any right arising from the existence of that title shifts to the party asserting such a limitation. We have been before the courts through the Marshall inquiry. A lot of our rights have already been proven in courts, federal, and provincial, and Supreme Courts. Yet we still have to go through this process each time. You know, this is what's happening when they don't recognize the laws of Indigenous peoples over their own lands. And in the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, we also talk about Section 32, Article 32. States shall consult and cooperate in good faith with the Indigenous peoples concerned through their own representation, representative institutions, in order to obtain their free, prior, and informed consent for any approval to any project affecting their lands, their territories, or their resources, particularly in connection with the development, utilization, or exploitation of mineral, water, or other resources. These articles, these things have already been done, and this took over 25 years of consultation within the UN. Why aren't these things being utilized today? Why are we having to be on the front line? Why are women having to put their bodies on the front line to protect their land and their water? And not only here in Canada, this is across the world. So what I really believe is that this UN declaration is the answer to the turmoil and the fight for Indigenous people to survive. And I really felt that it needs to be said. You know, the things that are happening in the world today, not only because of the virus, but you know, the COVID virus, but it was something that made people pause and let the earth breathe, and let the earth clean her air and water. And it gave everybody a pause to realize that we need to protect the world. We need to protect Mother Earth. We need to protect the land, the water, and the resources that we need to live. So I felt it was really telling, and when people talk about the violence that's happening to the earth is happening to the women of the earth, because that it is their responsibility as women to protect the water. And as life givers, as being able to bring life forward onto this earth, we are also given that responsibility to protect the water and to teach to teach others about the sacredness of water, and that we all need, every living being needs water, clean water to live. And today we see the damage that's been done to the earth and the water. And today people are fighting this virus without clean water, you know, without being able to even simply take things for granted that we do. We can drink water out of a glass, you know, we can wash our hands with soap and water, clean water, you know, and people don't have that, you know, and I think it's really important that people pray for that, for the change that is coming. Whether we're ready or not, the world is changing. Mother Earth is cleansing herself, and we need to be ready and to help her as well. And regarding Alton, we are in COVID lockdown right now, and the court ordered consultation to actually take place. So regarding consultation, as much as that, when it's already built and they already broke their own laws, you know, the government and the corporation both broke laws by allowing this to get to where it is when we're still in court, and the court is saying that we need to be consulted. So that tells you a lot. We need prayers, and we're going to fight this through, and we're not going to let anything happen to our river, our water. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doreen. And thank you for being there on the river, for connecting us to the river and reminding us to connect to the rivers we're close to and the waters, and for being there in the courts and reminding all our systems that we need to be there.
Yes, we still have women water protectors, grandmothers that are before the courts as well, or standing up on the at the river, standing up for our treaty rights and for the rights of the water. Yes.
Yes. It is so important. Thank you, Doreen. And as is our custom to walk from place to place to hear the next speaker, it gives us a pause to think about what we've just heard. Suzanne Mazars is going to lead us in some music. Suzanne is a pianist, composer, vocalist, arranger, and conductor, and currently the music director at Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Congregation and the assistant conductor for Toronto's largest social justice choir, Common Thread. So I'll invite Suzanne now to lead us in a little moment of music.
Thank you, Shannon. And I want to thank Mary Ellen for inviting me and encouraging me to share my talents and be a part of the event this afternoon. Peace, salam, shalom, shanti to everyone gathered today. I've set our slogan to music, and I'd like to go over it line by line and call and response so that we can all learn it together. So we'll speak it first. I'll go first. Building a border-free world. Building a border-free world. A world without war. A world without war. Under one blue sky. Under one blue sky. We'll go line by line. So it sounds like this. Building a border-free world. Your turn. Build a border-free world. A without war. A world without blue sky. And I'll leave it, I'll lead it now. Join along with me and we'll have another chance to sing this at the end of our event today. Building a border-free world, a world without war, under one blue sky. Building a border-free world, a world without war, under one blue sky. Building a border-free world, a world without war, under one blue sky. Building a border-free world, a world without war, under one blue sky. Building a border-free world, a world without war, under one blue sky. Last time. Building a border-free world, a world without war, under one blue sky. Thank you everyone for singing with me.
Thank you, Suzanne, for putting those important words to such a beautiful tune. Our next speakers are Jane Sagar and Angela Oriana Schwalm, who are both members of Pax Christi Toronto, an arm of Pax Christi International, a global Catholic peace movement which promotes peace and active nonviolence. They'll be speaking today on the voices of the earth as reflected in nature. So Angela and Jane, I invite you to speak now.
Thank you, Shannon. I'll start by saying that God speaks to us through nature, and his message is one of love and peace. Nature enriches, restores, and inspires us. In fact, the book of Revelation tells us, listen to the universe. It is the manifestation of the divine. Nature's imbued with the presence of God. We're fed, clothed, and nurtured by its gifts. We find peace in flowing rivers, in oceans, in meadows, forests, and birds of the air. These wondrous gifts are powerful and they are intended for all. However, selfishness, a false sense of superiority, and human dominance over nature have led to overconsumption, pollution, degradation, and climate change, all for the sake of profit. The voice of the earth has been drowned out by the noise of progress. We've learned to tune it out, or it has become unrecognizable over the din. We're slowly becoming alienated from the life-giving aspects of nature, both physically and spiritually. In his encyclical Laudato Si', Pope Francis invites us to return to a state of right relations through integral ecology, which recognizes that we are all interconnected. And what we do to the earth, we do to each other. He said, nature cannot be regarded as something separate from ourselves or as a mere setting in which we live. We are part of nature, included in it, and thus in constant interaction with it. In his message on the World Day of Peace in 2019, Pope Francis makes that connection between peace and nature. He said, peace is the fruit of a great political project, grounded in mutual responsibility and interdependence of human beings. It entails a conversion of heart and soul. It's both interior and communal, and has three inseparable aspects: peace with oneself, peace with others, and peace with all creation. St. Francis of Assisi, patron saint of ecology, exemplifies that inseparable bond between concern for nature, justice for the poor, commitment to society, and interior peace. In our own time, one who embodied many of these same qualities is Sister Mary Albin Bouchard. Throughout her life, she worked for peace and nonviolence and inspired others to do the same. In the 1980s, Sister Mary Albin walked with peace builders, bishops, and Hibakusha, calling for nuclear disarmament. She reached out to religious and lay leaders and peacemakers to establish Pax Christi Canada. Working in Haiti for 20 years, she engaged and empowered the poorest people, helping women in Port-au-Prince and Cap-Haitien to establish micro-businesses, and working with students to build literacy through school books in their own Creole language. In September 2013, Pax Christi Toronto presented Sister Mary Albin, age 81, with its first ever Teacher of Peace Award. Today, we are at a watershed moment in human history. As tragic as this pandemic has been, it has given us this precious gift of time to reflect on what is really important, to pause from our normal economic activities, to realize that we depend upon each other, and once again, to hear the voice of the earth. Let's listen to the message of COVID-19 as it speaks to us in 2020 by this adaptation from a reflection by Vivian Wright. Jane?
Jane, we need you to unmute yourself.
Oh, okay, I thought you could do that. All right, I'll start again. The earth whispered, but you did not hear. The earth spoke, but you did not listen. The earth screamed, but you turned her off. And so I was born. I was not born to punish you. I was born to awaken you. The earth cried out for help. Massive flooding. Did you listen? Burning fires. Did you listen? Strong hurricanes. Did you listen? Terrifying tornadoes. Did you listen? Are you listening to the earth when severe drought is taking the land? When ocean creatures are dying due to pollutants in the waters? When glaciers are melting at an alarming rate? I am COVID-19. I am here. And I have made the world stop in its tracks. And I've made you finally listen. I've made you take refuge. I've made you stop thinking about materialistic things. Now, you are like the earth. You are only worried about your survival. How does that feel? I give you fever as the fires burn on earth. I give you respiratory issues as pollution fills the earth's air. I give you weakness as the earth weakens every day. I took away your comforts, your outings, the things you would use to forget about the planet and its pain. And I made the world stop. And now, China has better air quality. Skies are clear blue because factories are not spewing pollution into the Earth's air. The water in Venice is clean. And because the gondolas and boats that dominated the water are not being used, the fish are returning. You have to take time to reflect on what is important in your life. I am not here to punish you. I'm here to awaken you. When all this is over and I am gone, please remember these moments. Listen to the earth. Listen to your soul. Stop polluting the earth. Stop fighting amongst each other. Stop caring about materialistic things. And start loving your neighbors. Start caring about the earth and all of its creatures. Because next time, I may come back even stronger. Don't touch that.
Thank you so much, Jane and Angela. I think we're all seeing this image. What a beautiful image and a backdrop. And perhaps it will come up again as we now turn to Sister Mary Ellen Francoeur, a sister of service with a background in psychology and creation spirituality, who has worked in the areas of peace and justice for many years. Relationship with the earth and the story of the universe are her framework for her life and work. And today she's going to lead us in some movement.
Thank you very much, Shannon. And thanks to Angela and Jane for their powerful messages today. And perhaps we could just take a moment to breathe in what we have received. Those of you who know me know that I always love to include body in anything we're doing. I believe that through the body we integrate in a far more powerful way sometimes than just words. So I'd like to introduce you to some healing movements called Shibashi. They come from ancient China. And in doing them, we really experience ourselves at one with all of creation and at one with the Creator. And the marvel is that as we send out energy, our bodies and our spirits are healed at the same time. So I'm not sure if we can manage for you to see me introduce these movements. The first one is a greeting movement. So we're going to open our arms to the side and up over our heads. So we'll be breathing in, taking in all the energy of the cosmos, greeting it, and inviting it to flow through our whole being, and then flow out to heal the earth. The second movement I'll invite you to is one where we'll imagine ourselves standing by the sea. And we'll begin by bringing our arms up, or excuse me, rather with all the energy that's around us, this cosmic energy, our arms are going to be raised like they're floating up and our palms out as we become one with all of those energies by the sea, the wind, the sun, the birds, the plants, the rocks. That energy flows into us and we become one with it. We lower our hands, and once again, our arms will be raised, our hands out. With all the energy that's within us, we now can send that energy out through our hands, through our palms, to bring healing to wherever you feel it may be most needed. And then we'll move into another movement where we'll imagine ourselves standing on a mountain or a high hill. And all of creation is spread out before us. We'll bring our arms up, and then we'll open our arms wide, opening our hearts to all of creation. And then our arms will come together in an embrace of that creation. And we'll do that twice. So hopefully you have that. I'm going to attempt to stand up and still hope that you see me. And if you feel like standing, it's a good time to do that. And we can do these 3 movements. Thank you. I could see you all doing those movements, and I hope that they've brought you more in touch in your relationship with creation and with all of us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Mary Ellen. And now I'd like to introduce Aloysius Wong, who is the Central Ontario Youth Rep of Development and Peace, the Canadian member organization of Caritas International. Development and Peace supports partners in the Global South who promote alternatives to unfair social, political, and economic structures. So, Aloysius, I invite you to speak to us now, and I know you've got some things to show us as well. Welcome here.
Thank you, Shannon. I'll just be sharing my screen. I'll set this up. Oh, there you go. Wonderful. Thank you. Specifically, I'm here to talk about development and peace, and specifically our campaign this year, which is called Care for a Common Home. Does anybody know what's in this picture, like where it is, where it's set?
We were talking about this picture earlier and I made a guess. Does anyone else have a guess?
I heard someone mouth it, but was probably muted.
Is it the Amazon?
Yes, it is the Amazon. So this year, Development and Peace, we're launching a campaign called Care for Our Common Home, as you can see, highlighting the importance of protecting the Amazon and its peoples. The Amazon rainforest, which is critical to the Earth's ecological balance, is going up in flames. Intent on continuing to live sustainably in the Amazon, individuals and communities are defending their territories and opposing the devastation and pollution of forests, land, and water. So to help support them, we've launched a campaign, and I'll talk about it. I'll go into a little bit more detail. But first up, could you go to the next slide? So here's an image of the world map. showing, where we have different sorts of development programs historically and humanitarian aid, etc. And the yellow dots representing where there's both kinds. But what's different about it? What do people know? What do you notice? A lot of presentation at development peace usually begin with an image like this because it puts the global south at the top of the map instead of at the bottom. Whereas usually we're accustomed to seeing, Canada and the United States, Europe at the top. A fact that we tend to start off is that the first photo taken from outer space was actually in this orientation, but when they sent it back to NASA before releasing it out to the public, they had, they oriented it back so that Canada and the United States would be again on the top, so the North would be there. And so we like to present it this way, just to sort of change people's perspectives in terms of, first of all, how the world looks in terms of how we're used to it, but also, who matters, right? Where a lot of people in our culture tend to believe and act in such a way that, that I matter more than everyone else. But in looking at the world this way, I think we can come to a bit deeper understanding of, knowing that if anyone else is in need, then, we're all responsible for taking care of each other. Next slide. If everyone in the world lived as we do here in Canada and the United States, we'd need 5 planets as a whole. And so what this reminds us of is, if we continue to live the way we do in terms of consuming as much as we do, and obviously it's no individual's fault, and there's it's part of a much larger systemic project and a cultural outlook that we have. But our planet can keep sustaining this way of life that we have right now. And as Gandhi says in the next slide, the world has enough for everyone's needs, but not enough for everyone's greed. And next slide. We have to live simply so that others may simply live. Next slide, please. So I guess to introduce the campaign a little bit more, this photo, whether or not you'll believe it or not, is taken in the middle of the afternoon in Sao Paulo, in Brazil, on August 20th, 2019. And the reason the sky was this dark was because of the fires that were burning throughout the country, from the rainforest burning. Next slide. So this year, Development and Peace, we decided to choose this campaign theme before actually Brazil and the Amazon started getting a lot of media attention due to the forest fires. The particular image here captures the forest fire detections between August 15th to 22nd. And most of them are by the Brazilian government agency responsible for tracking all this. Even though there is a natural forest fire season each year, the numbers spiked greatly last year in 2019, and by some estimates, more than 84% higher than the previous year. This is emboldened in large part by government, and that is increasingly permissive of the exploitation and flouting of existing environmental laws in the country. So yeah, and on the side there you can see there's an image of all the various news articles of continuing news coverage of the Amazon burning last summer. Next slide. So in a strange sort of sense, a lot of things converge at the same time. In a sign that we believe is, that says that the Holy Spirit is, with us with this mission. We chose a campaign team before things got and started like this, and other things also happened, like Pope Francis visiting Brazil for a synod there and meeting with indigenous people there himself. Next slide. But clearly there's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot that we have to try to do ourselves, even here from Canada. You might not know that Global Affairs Canada reports that Canadian firms invested about $11.5 billion in Brazil last year, accounting for about 1% of total investment. abroad. So a lot of our mining and our energy and oil and gas corporations are among those that are exploiting the Amazon's resources. It isn't just the people there that are using it up for the sake of using it up. A lot of it ties back directly, not even just to the States, but to our own country. And as a result, the equivalent of 1 to 3 soccer fields of forest cover is lost every minute in the Amazon right now. Next slide. Similarly, a lot of this push is to build more roads and railways to connect more of the country, but the price of that is tearing down a lot of that forest. The Trans Amazonian Highway, it's very long. It's quite lengthy, and it is connecting a lot of the country, but it is also destroying a lot of the forest cover. Next slide. Another big part that's putting on the pressure on Brazil right now is the oil extraction and the mining. In 2017, 6% of Canada's total mining assets abroad were located in Brazil. That's $11.5 billion I mentioned a moment ago. And a Globe and Mail article also recently concluded that these, the agencies that they're supposed to regulate our Canadian companies generally tend to lack transparency in the projects that would not meet Canadian standards. So even though we have human rights laws and standards here when investing and doing resource extraction abroad, those aren't necessarily always met, and we don't know to the extent that they always are because of this lack of transparency. Next slide. And finally, industrial agriculture. A big part that's causing this increasing push to deforest the Amazon is to have more space for pastures because of the world's increasing need for meat and beef specifically. Brazil has become the world's largest exporter of beef, accounting for 20% of all beef exports worldwide. So what can we do about this? Next and final slide. One thing that we can all do is sign this intergenerational pledge for our common home. I'll add the link into the chat. And it's just ways for us to commit to ourselves and to each other. The ways that we can choose to make changes in our personal lives to reduce our emissions and the pressures that are pushing for this in the Amazon. Other things we're doing as an organization are we'll be pushing more for MPs to push more legislation to create positions like ombudspersons that will protect the human rights and continue to advocate for them and hold our own corporations accountable. And there's also a solidarity letter that's not on this slide right now, but I'll also send a link to that. That's just a letter to the indigenous people like the Seringueiros and the Moor people in the Amazon that are fighting to keep it alive. These are the lungs of the earth that, so much of our future is predicated on keeping our forests there. So it's just also a letter of solidarity for us all to share that we are both here in Canada and they're fighting for the same cause. So I'll add those things to the chat, and that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aloysius, for sharing all of that information with us and for sharing that campaign where we can take action. And as we let those images of the Amazon sink into our consciousness as part of who we are as Earth protectors, those who want to honor the Earth, also remember that we will have a question and answer period at the end. So if you have questions for any of the speakers, you can write them now in the chat while you think about them, or save them up to ask verbally. We'll have about 15 minutes at the end for questions. And all our speakers will be available then. So now Suzanne will sing with us, have another short musical interlude before we hear from Aaron.
Thank you. I'd like to lead us in a gentle, meditative song, affirmation for our care for the earth. It has actions. You're welcome to sing and do the actions or one or the other. It goes like this. We are the hands. We are the heart. We are the voice of spirit on earth. And all we are and all we do is a blessing to the world. I'll sing it for you. You're welcome to join in with me whenever you're ready. We are the hands. We are the heart. We are the voice of spirit on earth. And all we are, and all we do is a blessing to the world. We are the hands, we are the heart, we are the voice of spirit on earth. And all we are, and all we do is a blessing to the world. We are the hands, we are the heart, we are the voice of spirit on earth. And all we are, and all we do is a blessing to the world. Let's do it one more time. We are the hands, we are the heart, we are the voice of spirit on earth. And all we are, and all we do is a blessing to the world. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Erin O'Connor. Erin is 17 years old, a grade 12 student at St. Michael's Catholic Secondary in Stratford. She's been one of the lucky ones in my books to attend Camp Micah, which you should know is only for high school students, but she's attended for about 10 years already, since her dad is on staff. Erin is also part of her school's social justice group, which organizes trips to Blue Scarf Walks and Fridays for Future events and other retreats. On behalf of Camp Micah, I want to welcome Erin.
Hi. Hopefully this works. Can you guys hear me? Good.
Yes, Erin, we can hear you.
So I'm just going to start by reading a paragraph from a passage. It's called "We Have the Right." So, before a recent Youth Leadership Summit, organizer Maya Soleto, winner of 2012 Browser Youth Award, said, "As youth, we are on the front lines of a broken food system. That's what motivates us to make real change. Like all movements for justice in our country's history, we believe youth are the catalyst for systematic change." So that's sort of more on the Youth Food Bill of Rights, but that section kind of talks about how it's important for younger people to learn about these types of issues going on in the world so that in the future, we'll be able to carry out those issues and achieve like sustainable development goals, because the youth are what shape the future. So with that being said, my name is Erin. I'm 17, like she said in the introduction. I'm going to be talking about Camp Micah and how it influences the youth to become a voice for the environment. So me and many of my friends have been learning about the importance of world issues and environmental issues through camp. I've been attending this camp ever since I was a kid, and it's something I look forward to going to every year. So Camp Micah is a camp for the youth that focuses on leadership, social justice, and how to make a change in the world. And one of the many topics that it touches is environmental issues and what we can kind of do to reduce them. So, for example, Camp Micah has 3 lead groups for returning participants: Leap Create, Leap Journey, and Leap Earth. And one of my friends participated in Leap Earth, and she told me that one of the things that Leap Earth groups does is they went on a retreat to nearby forests where they reflected on their surroundings, how they feel connected to nature, and how they can apply and how they can change ongoing issues in the world that relate to climate change and how they can apply that to their everyday lives. So that's just what Leap Earth kind of focuses on throughout the camp. So she told me that it really opened her eyes and it got her more involved with the environment and how to sustain it. They also invited an Indigenous woman. I really hope I get her name right. I think it's Marielle or Marie. I don't know if that's right, but it's something like that. And she shared her experiences along with like protests she attended against like the development of pipelines and anything against the destruction of nature and the natural environment. She also shared how Indigenous culture can see themselves as connected with nature and how they defend Earth's biodiversity. And you can see in one of the photos of her, she's running a blanket exercise, which is a workshop that more explores the past relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada, but it also shows how creation has sort of been broken through that relationship as well. So through my experience last year, I was in Leap Create, and we met with an Indigenous man in Toronto, and he taught us about the medicine wheel, which symbolizes dimensions of health and the cycles of life and healing, which you can see in one of the other photos, I believe, and how we can sort of take care of the earth. And that's just what some of the stuff that camp focuses on. So I asked a couple of my friends who went to camp for the past years what their thoughts on it. So these are just what some of them had to say. So Olivia Souls went to camp for, I think, 3 years, it could be 2, but she said, Camp Micah is a place where I felt free and that I could be myself. Camp is such an accepting place that so many different people of different backgrounds can come together for the common good. And I have truly never experienced anything similar in my life. Camp is a very special place where I've been taught to look at how certain issues affect other people in different ways, and that compassion and kindness are 2 of the most important tools in life. Everyone at camp comes together to create an environment of acceptance and love, and it is truly somewhere that I've always felt at home, and I believe it is doing so much good for our earth. And Claire Sangster was a first-year participant last year, and she said, well, it was amazing. It really opened my eyes to a lot of world issues. I met a lot of awesome people who shared their life stories, and it was very inspiring. Camp was fun, but it also taught participants about themselves and how to take care of not just ourselves, but the world around us. And those are just some of the examples that they said. So camp it has such a huge effect on kids, in which they take away important skills that they learned and they take it back home with them. So some of the participants that go to my school, what we did is we joined our school social justice group, and we organized Earth Day for our school, where we did activities like no waste lunch, and we organized environment retreats for the grade 9s, and we even organized some Fridays for Futures, where on Fridays we would sort of strike and protest about environmental rights and how we need to be in climate emergency. So I don't know if Stratford's in climate emergency, but it definitely worked for a couple of places for sure. So we sort of just take what we learned from camp to everyone at our schools, and we hope that they take something away from these kind of experiences too. So that's it pretty much, but I just wanted to close with a quote that I think sort of connects camp to the environment and nature, and it is, keep close to nature's heart and break clear way once in a while, and climb a mountain or spend a week in the woods. Wash your spirit clean. And that's by John Muir. And that's pretty much it. So that's everything that I wrote. That's all she wrote.
Thank you so much, Erin, for telling us about how Camp Micah was important in your life, how that has given you the information you need to take it further to be a voice for the earth. I want to assure everyone you can ask your questions in the chat, and if there are more pieces of information like the poem and such, we can share those later by email. And so Sister Mary Ellen is going to lead us in a couple more minutes of movement before we move on to Melissa.
So I hope the movements that I'll lead us in this time pick up on some of the themes that we've been hearing. The first one will be very simple, where we'll have our hands out. This movement will be about sounds. And I think there was reference at some point to a lot of the very harsh sounds that we get in the world today due to machines and cars and traffic. So it's like bringing back the harsh sounds and bringing forward the harmony of the universe. Again, bringing back these terribly harsh, painful sounds and bringing back the music of the cosmos. Bringing back the harsh sounds and bringing forward all the life-giving sounds of creation. And again, bringing back those painful sounds, bringing forward the life-giving sounds around us. We also, in a lot of the stories, hearing about violence that's done to the earth and to all those on the earth. So this movement will be, we take our arms up to create a rainbow. And this is a rainbow of peace, of healing energy. And our arms can float down, bringing that healing energy to the earth, scooping up violence that's done to the earth for healing. Again, the healing energy to the earth and scooping up perhaps all the violence of war and conflict, what it does to the earth. Again, the healing energy to the earth and scooping up the violence done to the most vulnerable. Again, energy to the earth and scooping up. I often think of it as all the violence that may be planned, just in the process of being planned or in someone's mind. Bringing it all up for healing. And then finally, a movement that acknowledges all the suffering that takes place on the earth. And we know there's a lot of suffering now. So we'll be bringing up in a flowing motion all the suffering of the earth for healing and for blessing. And we'll do that again with the other arm. Then with this arm, we'll bring up our hopes for a good harvest on the earth and offering that for blessing. And again, our hopes and prayers for a good harvest to feed the people and bringing that for blessing. So I'm again going to try to start, yes?
We're a little behind schedule. Would you mind if we go on? And
all right, sure.
And then we'll do one more with you later, right?
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for that movement. And we're going to hear from Melissa Wheel, who works for Peace with the Environment. She works with World Beyond War and Canadian Voice of Women for Peace. Melissa is also the founder of She Cycle, a nonprofit that works to restructure the waste system, bringing respect for the earth and a desire for peace into the materials of our daily living.
Thank you, Shannon. So yes, my name's Melissa, and my work is to be peace with the environment. So next slide. So I wanted to do a bit of an introduction for the organizations that I work with and for and started, but Shannon did a good explanation. I'll do a bit more. So during these times, it gives us a chance to get back to the environment and the grounds beneath us, rediscover the gifts beneath our feet, and take a step back from the busy lives that we're building too fast. I work with the two amazing peace organizations to educate with the peace culture. They have amazing curriculums that I use, and it really helps. Now I'm trying to get online with some of these. So, and then with both, I get the opportunity to teach and share these ways and express more of how I feel through these channels. These organizations also give me a worldly view of what others are doing to stand up to these challenging times and network with others who can help each other. With my organization, SheCycle, where we work to restructure the waste system, we work with leftovers of life, and there's so much that can be just fixed or reprocessed into something else. So slide. We have gone too far with the material world and need to stop making and use what we already have created. We can work with what we have and go from there. That is the main goal of SheCycle and how we can make true peace with the environment. I want to share the message of reevaluating your waste and reconsidering how it can be used again. The connection to the peace is the awareness. As when you become conscious of the waste you're producing, you are more conscious of what you will end up in the landfills. As much waste that gets thrown away and recycled ends up in the landfills. Take that extra moment to rinse that container or take a package apart. There's so many things you can redo with that package or properly recycle it. You will find so many things to reuse and find new uses for. As one example in the next slide. Toilet paper rolls are the best example right now, as they can be used for seed starters. As the paper, the brown ones preferably, as the other ones, the white ones are a bit bleached, but they still kind of do the job. Can help fertilize and give a good structure to the growth of that seed. It can also be put right into the ground to continue breaking down. As communities, we work together and influence each other in these actions. You can go to the next slide. So creating jobs to sort, process, remake, and redistribute, providing new opportunities and items to be created. The whole cycle could make such a change from how we think today and now tomorrow with these even faster changing times. Including all this change and accepting the difference we create, working in peace with each other to help benefit and enhance our needs in life that the current system cannot provide. We can't forget what's beneath our feet in the chaos, and we have to remember it is the pathways to peace and that the peace is part of the environment. One with the earth, one with your heart, one with all. You can reach out to me after to get involved because there's lots of actions through all these organizations that we're doing. So you can go to the next slide and it'll be a nice ending picture. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Melissa. That's an important part of care for the earth. We can spend a lot of time in our thoughts and our philosophies, but it's also so important for us to think about what we do with our hands and our feet and all our things. And Suzanne, do you have one more piece that you'll share with us before we hear from Natalie?
Yes, I'd like to review the slogan song that I taught at the beginning. So I'll just review it once. We'll sing it a few times. We'll do call and response to start, and then so again, building a border-free world, your turn. Building a border-free world, my turn. A world without war. A world without war. My turn. Under one blue sky. Under one blue sky. Building a border-free world, a world without war, under one blue sky. Building a border-free world, a world without war, under one blue sky. Building a border-free world, a world without war, under one blue sky. Thank you.
Beautiful. Natalie Maxon comes to us from unceded territory of the Syilx, the Okanagan Nation territory. She's a member of Christian Peacemaker teams, and I welcome her to speak to us this afternoon.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I'm here in BC, in the Okanagan and Syilx territory, and the place where I live is called House of Bald Eagle, Cheeks Pelquilquain. And so it's great to join you all. And I see some other CPTers on this gathering, so shout out to you all. I see you there. And I'm just going to share some photos and some experiences from up north in Wet'suwet'en territory. I was there as a legal observer in February, and this first picture is taken on the highway to get to Houston, BC. It runs from Prince George all the way up north and to the west, and it's known as the Highway of Tears because many Indigenous women and girls have gone missing on the highway. So when we were, to give you a bit of a sense of the of the land, Wet'suwet'en territory, if you drive northeast for 12 hours from Vancouver, that's where you end up. So it's a long drive from the interior here. You can go to the next slide. So Highway of Tears, if you haven't heard of it before, there's a couple good documentaries. You can look it up online, look for Highway of Tears. So when we arrived in the territory at the Gidimdim camp on the Morris Forest Service Road, there were many memorials for the missing women and girls. Many people that I spoke to in the community, I mean, there's not a single person I spoke to who didn't have a friend or family member who'd gone missing. And so the red dresses were there to remind people of the missing women and girls, missing and murdered women and girls. You can go to the next picture. So this is the cabin where we stayed at the Gidimdim camp to do our legal observation work. And you can go to the next slide. There are several camps along the forest road, and that was the one at the base of the road. And this is the river called Wedzinqua. The English name is called the Morris River. And this is where we got our drinking water. So we went with big jugs, filled them up, and that's what we use to cook and clean and drink. And I've lived in a lot of places, and growing up, I live here near the Okanagan River. I've lived near the Shuswap River, and in my experience, rivers are places where you have to be careful. Like you can get sick from the water. Like the Shuswap River, I remember we have to be careful when you get a pumped water from that river. And so for me, the experience of just going and drinking water from a river was incredible. And I realized that what people are fighting for here is they are fighting to protect their territory from the Coastal GasLink pipeline. And they're protecting the forests, they're protecting the animals, they're protecting this water. And since 20 years ago, the Wet'suwet'en have proven, again, in the Canadian system, in the legal system with the Delgamuukw case, that they are the rights and title holders to their own territory. This territory has never been ceded by treaty or any other way to Canada or to British Columbia. And that's really important to remember when thinking about this struggle that people have been fighting for their territory to be protected. You can go to the next picture. So there, when we were there as legal observers, we were monitoring the RCMP and documenting what they were doing. So they set up a checkpoint where they restricted the access of people onto the territory, and only they created what was called an exclusion zone, which isn't really a legal thing. They just made it up, where only people licensed to practice law in BC were allowed to enter. Media were allowed to enter for the most part, although they did also restrict media. We witnessed them restricting media. And Wet'suwet'en members, so chiefs and community members, but even they were restricted at times. So we did see people being denied access to their own territory. And we would document that for any court cases that come up or legal challenges. You can go to the next slide. So here's my friend and colleague, Chuck, in his legal observer vest, and I took this picture, and this was some community members, including some chiefs, Chief Namox and some others that wanted to cross the checkpoint because the RCMP started invading the territory and clearing out the people at the camps. And something that was really powerful that I witnessed, Chief Namox said, he said, "We're not asking your permission to cross. We are going to cross. This is our territory." And it took a couple hours, and they got the police chief in. And then eventually several of us were allowed to cross the checkpoint and go to where the RCMP invaded and removed several people from one of the camps. I think it's important to note that British Columbia has adopted the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in spite of all of this, that reality on the ground. And that I'm just struck by the contrast between the Highway of Tears, the women and girls who've gone missing and been murdered, and how frustrated community members are that the police haven't done more. And on the other hand, what we observed is that RCMP, millions and millions of dollars are going into policing this territory. So every morning at dawn, we witnessed up to 50 RCMP vehicles and industry vehicles going in as a convoy into the territory to create the space for the pipeline to go in. We saw RCMP helicopters, drones, K9 units, SWAT teams, tactical units, so much policing. And one of the RCMP branches that's up there, it's called CIRG, Community Industry Relations Group. So there's a specific RCMP branch just to deal with industry, and they basically chaperone the industry vehicles in and out of the territory. You can go to the next slide. So this was at Camp 39, the first camp that the RCMP invaded, and then they invaded Camp 44, and then they invaded our camp, and then Unistoten Camp at the top. And I encourage you all to look up Unistoten Camp and Yinta Access websites for more information about the situation there on the ground. So this sign, it says no man camps. So from the MMIWG report, you may be aware that there's a strong link between man camps, or the camps that industry sets up for workers, and the trafficking or disappearance of women. And so people in the community are concerned about that. You can stop the photos now. So I also just want to mention that trips to Tyendinaga blockade and several, I think 3 blockades in Toronto and several rallies in Toronto as well, when Shut Down Canada started, and when people across Turtle Island started, well, across the globe really started reacting to the RCMP invasion in the territory. Work is still continuing. CGL continues to be doing its work in spite of pandemic, and so they are putting community members, especially elders, at risk in the Wet'suwet'en territory by continuing to do their work in the area and not respecting the COVID-19 restrictions. And I want to thank Doreen for what she said about violence done to the earth and violence done to the women. And that's what really sticks out to me, is that contrast in the policing. Anyone who pays taxes, you know that this tax money is going to the RCMP to do this work, where we're not protecting the women and girls, and instead they're escorting industry against the people's will to do this. So thank you all for listening to this, and I hope you'll keep updated with the situation. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalie, for giving us that personal perspective on an issue that many of us will have seen in the news, and for sharing that, bringing it all into our consciousness today as those important voices for the earth. I'm going to ask for one more speaker before Mary Ellen closes off the formal part of our presentations, and we have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. So I'm going to call on Beth Lorimer to introduce to us a faith-based initiative for climate justice. Beth.
Thank you, Shannon. And hello, everyone. I'm speaking to you from my home, somewhere between the Don and Humber River watershed, kind of where the dividing line is. The rivers are hidden in Toronto, where I live, so it's hard to tell, but I'm speaking to you from that watershed and as a guest on the land governed by the Dishra-Quansipan Wampum Belt Covenant. And happy to be sharing this time with you today. I'm here today to introduce For the Love of Creation with You. It's a new initiative of faith-based organizations and churches in Canada who are committed to make a meaningful contribution to climate justice over the next decade. So far, we are 22 organizations and churches that have endorsed this work, and we continue to grow. Kairos and Development and Peace, who are here on this at this event, are 2 of those endorsing organizations. Recognizing that we are entering a critical decade for the climate, knowing that we have to take strong action before 2030, these organizations are pledging to collaborate even more deeply, more intensely, and engage more broadly than we ever have before. We are uniting under a unified banner and join the world in turning the world upside down for climate justice, and to build a sustainable life for peoples and the earth. And we're doing this work in honor of a few things, of Indigenous peoples' resilience, their wisdom, their place at the front of any struggle. And we've heard from Grandmother Doreen and from Natalie about the Wet'suwet'en today, and there's many more across the globe where this has been the case. We are honoring global partners who we work with and others work with who show a sustainable way forward even in imminent crisis. We are honoring social movements here in Canada who have worked so diligently for accountability and change. And we are honoring young people whose transformative work is changing everything. For the Love of Creation, we'll commit to stronger action through Canadian-wide education, theological reflection, advocacy, and action. And as we emerge from this phase of the pandemic, we will begin to roll out some of those activities related to those areas. And we hope we will have an opportunity to take some meaningful action in whichever way the next phase of the pandemic allows us to do so. If you're interested in learning more about this work and about the initiative, I am going to post a link in the chat of the statement that was released on Mother Earth Day on Wednesday with the list of organizations who have signed on so far. And if you have any questions, you can direct them to me. I'll also include my email and the link to my Facebook page at Kairos Canada, where I post a lot of information and we'll be posting updates about this work. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Know that you will have, again, information sent to you about all of the speakers and organizations and the actions that are being taken in the coming days, and that you're invited to put your questions or your information into the chat for everyone to see. And we're going to ask Sister Mary Ellen to wrap up the formal part of our time with more movements. And then if there are a few burning questions, those speakers that can stay a little bit past the half hour, that would be great. And we'll see if there are a few questions before we sign off. Sister Mary Ellen.
Thanks. I'll make this very simple and short, but it will pull together, I think, all that we've been sharing. If you need a stretch, I'm going to get up or at least crouch here. So this first movement will be one where we imagine that our arms are the wings of a windmill. And between our hands, we're holding the planet Earth. So as we move our arms around, we continue to hold the earth, the healing energy from our hands going into the earth. And then we can go in the other direction. And then we'll go back to a movement that we started with, which is opening to all of the energy of the cosmos. And now the energy of gratitude, bringing our hands together, greeting all that energy and inviting it to flow through our whole being so that it can flow out again to bring healing to the earth. And then we step forward to the rest of this day and to the rest of our lives, bringing peace, being instruments of peace and sharing it wherever we go. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. And now with a stretch and a movement, are your minds refreshed? Are there any questions that you're burning to ask out loud to our speakers? Now, don't be shy.
If you're on your telephone, you can press *9 to raise your hand and then we can call on you. And if you're on Zoom, you can click participants and then click raise hand and then we'll call on you. And you can also just type in questions in the chat box and in Facebook comments as well. And Mark, I think you said there's one question on Facebook.
Yeah. Well, this is actually sort of a comment that maybe anybody wants to say something about. This is from Stephen. Imagine 1/4 of the blue waters of Lake Tahoe, about 10 trillion gallons worth. That is what would be used for the next 15 years if fracking continues. No idea about what that removal does to our global hydrologic cycle. Water is life.
Mm-hmm. So if any of our speakers want to jump in, you may, or we could leave it as a comment. We don't have any, perhaps, scientists here, but we all know what is really happening to the water cycle. And if you want to speak up, you just, Doreen, if you want to respond, you have to just unmute yourself, or I could do it for you, I think. There we go.
Yes, we all need to realize how sacred the water is, and that the water that they use, the millions and millions of gallons of water that they use for these extraction and fracking and salt caverns, and it's water that is no longer, can never be used again for the benefit of life. It's dead water. And when they put dead water into a living water source, it's going to kill that water too, contaminate this water. And it's like they inject, I don't know what they do in the United States, but here in Nova Scotia, the fracking company left a couple of ponds, frack ponds, waste ponds in a little town. And it took the government 7 years to clean those up. 7 years for 2 little frack ponds. And that was the beginning of fracking in Nova Scotia. Imagine if it comes here, the amount of water they will use to do fracking, and then what they're going to do with that water after, the wastewater afterwards. It just boggles the mind that there's laws, and there's environmental laws and federal laws, and yet those didn't protect that community when they left those ponds there and used that water. And since 2003, it's crazy. We can't allow that to happen here. So building the infrastructure off the salt caverns, they keep talking about 2 salt caverns, but their plan is 18 caverns, and millions of gallons of the river, the water, to be polluted and put back into the river. And that'll open up fracking in Nova Scotia, where we have a moratorium ban on fracking right now. But that would only take a stroke of a pen, to change that for our Mi'kma'ki. Yeah. So we've seen what happened in Elsipogtog, what it took to stop, SWN from fracking in New Brunswick. I don't know what it's going to take for them to stop what they're doing here. But building the infrastructure and allowing that to go through is that first step. So we have to stop what we call bite the head of the snake before it comes, and the rest of the pipeline and fracking come behind it.
Yes, thank you, Doreen. Absolutely. We have another question. I believe Joan had her hand raised. Can you just unmute yourself? Or who finds you first?
I just want to ask the question. I did put the question down, but I think it's really important to address the issue that Canada's interpretation of free prior informed consent is out of sync with the international interpretation. And so I was hoping that sometime the First Nations would invite the UN rapporteur to come to Canada and see what's happening here and how Canada is misinterpreting it. Because consent means consent. It doesn't mean coercion, and it doesn't mean just consultation. It means far more than that. It's close to being the veto, and I think it should be the veto.
Yes, I believe that too. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that,
Yes.
for that comment. And he has been here. I don't know about the new one, but any of us here, and they did speak at the UN regarding these issues from Wet'suwet'en, from Mi'kma'ki, from all over. It's been the issue that we've been bringing forward since the adoption of the UN Declaration. And we're gonna need everyone to come together to hold Canada accountable for implementing the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, as well as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action, which 13 of those are on the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. So if we're going to hold them accountable and hold them within their apology to the survivors of residential school, then we need to also make sure that those 94 calls to action are actually implemented and hold them accountable. We need everyone, all Canadians, to do that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and it was a sad day when the Bill 262 failed and didn't go forward to put the declaration into the laws of Canada.
Yes.
The government has promised that there will be another government bill, and Kairos and many other organizations are trying to keep that promise in front of them, and we'll let you folks know when there are, petitions and letter writing opportunities, because that is very important.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Are there other questions? I have not been keeping up with the chat.
I see one question for Natalie. Natalie, is there a report about the work that you did in the Wet'suwet'en territory? Is there something written that we could share with our MPs and colleagues and friends?
I did see that. I was trying to think. You could, if you're on Facebook, you could go to the Turtle Island Solidarity Network on Facebook, or cpt.org. So, and we're also having a webinar May 5th, I think, is when it is, with the 4 CPTers who were up in the territory as legal observers. So if you want to hear more about that information, that'll be coming up in about a week or so. So you could check cpt.org there. Thanks, Murray. Yeah, you got it. Thank you.
Once again, I want to thank all of our speakers and everyone who has come out today for this Earth Day or Earth Week celebration, to thank the organizers and all of the sponsoring organizations. I'll let you know that you can save things in the chat like I just did. I believe that's possible for all the participants, and also that everyone who registered will be getting an email from us. And so there'll be more information about these topics and some links and such in that email as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming and for staying a few minutes extra, and make every day Earth Day.
Well, thank you.